Well, let's get you more analysis now on the state of the U.S. and global economies. I'm joined live via Skype by Anders Aslund, economist and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
So overall, which countries and regions have taken the biggest economic hit from the pandemic so far?
Well, the biggest economic hit has been in the Eurozone, in particular Italy and Spain, that are down by about 10% this year. And China has done the best. China is the only significant economy that is actually growing this year, even if only by just over 2%. And next year, it looks as if virtually everybody is coming back very strongly. And the US has done surprisingly well with a decline of only 3.5% and probably as much growth next year. All kinds of emerging markets have done much better than expected. So this is really primarily a European crisis.
So then talk about the sectors that have been impacted the most by COVID and what governments have really done to help support those industries.
Well, you can say that the main thing is structural. Countries that have had a lot of tourism, think Spain and Italy, Croatia and other countries down there, they have suffered the most. The countries that have suffered the least have been those that have a lot of commodity production. And East Asia, where the manufacturing has kept going. So it's personal services that have suffered. And what has been done against it? The lesson so far is to pour as much money as possible on the economy. And here, of course, the US has poured much more money on the economy than anybody else.
And we have seen, you mentioned Asia, we've seen that China is seeing huge export numbers and was one of the first major economies to see any growth in 2020. What more can China do to really improve growth in 2021?
I think that the big question now when President Trump is departing, it is for China to get into normal relationship with the rest of the world. In the last year, China has actually stood up defending the global trading system, while President Trump has imposed all kinds of sanctions on China. It's very unclear what policy President-elect Biden will choose. And there, I think it's a great opportunity for China to try to go for cooperation rather than confrontation.
And as we look at the U.S. economy, obviously the vaccine rollout beginning here, just how important is the vaccine rollout and obviously this last-minute stimulus agreement for the country's economic growth for the rest of the year and then going into 2021?
Both are very important, but the vaccine is most important. And as it looks now, it seems as if the vaccine is becoming a great success. And as it said now, everybody should get an opportunity to get vaccinated in the spring, in the second quarter. And that should bring an end to this crisis. And since money is free, spend the money. It doesn't cost the state anything as it is today in the Western world, and therefore just keep going.
Now, we have heard talk of a V-shaped recovery by some or a K-shaped recovery scenario for others when it comes to the global economy. What does this actually mean for the average person or business in terms of what they can really expect the recovery to look like?
The V-shaped recovery is primarily expected in China, which hasn't had much of a downturn. But for the rest, it is that the growth next year will be approximately as the decline this year, a bit less in Europe, where the decline has been much greater. So say that the world at the end of next year will have slightly less of a GDP than it had at the beginning of this year. So it's 2 lost years as it looks now. But as it is now, the situation looks much better than anybody really expected last March. So we have to be very humble with the forecast now.
And honestly, as a side effect, we've seen that the pandemic has pushed a number of trade deals and financial mechanisms along in an effort to really shore up a post-pandemic recovery. Obviously, Brexit still being negotiated with just days to go. Just how important is a deal for Europe's prospects in 2021?
I think that the big positive surprise has been that we have not really seen a deglobalization. And here, the RCEP, Chinese big free trade area has been a big positive surprise. And we're now seeing Europe and China getting into a big investment deal. So essentially, the deglobalization has been indeed Brexit and the United States under Trump. And for the rest, it's been more and freer trade.